Growing deep within the roots of socialism is a brutal and dismissive view of human life.
The essence of Marx is simply that the universe is run by these cold, material, impersonal forces, and that over time we are going to see us move from the feudal, through the capitalist, to the socialist, to the communist stage. Along the way, a lot of people are going to get killed, and Marx was completely fine with this.
In the Nazi Germany, these groups were of course defined by ethnicity, like the Jews, for example, and in the Soviet Union they defined them by social origin. But the idea was the same.
Communist chief and dictator of 160 million Russians.
Today, most have forgotten the scale of the Soviet atrocities, particularly what may have been their most horrific. It began long before Hitler's horror was revealed. Popular uprising had become a problem in the Ukraine. Their spirit of individualism threatened the grand design of Moscow. Stalin decided to take steps and correct the problem.
The objective was to put the Ukrainians on their knees.
Stalin forced peasants to give up their farms under the banner of collectivization.
And it is the peasants who are the army of nationalism. So what do? You got to crush them.
Наприклад, у моєї дружини дідусь, який у 33-му році помер, був арештований за те, що він не захотів йти в колгосп. Просидів у тюрмі. Поки він сидів у тюрмі, його дружину змусили, щоб вона написала документ про розлучення. Бо в тебе дід приходить з тюрми, у його нема дружини, вона відлучена. Немає можливості зустрітися з дітьми, в його нема хати, в його нема землі, в його нема нічого. Це таких історій мільйони.
Stalin took everything, their independence, their livelihoods, and even their food, plunging the Ukraine into famine. And while the people were starving, it wasn't because the food wasn't growing. Grain production was skyrocketing. Instead of giving the grain to starving people, the Soviets exported it to fund their centrally planned industrialization. How the Soviets dealt with the hunger was inhuman.
Она заходит. А кто у вас здесь помер? Давай. Там до одной, значит, женщина сама лежит, опухшая, понимаю. Так, говорит, давай ее сейчас заберем. Что ее, она все равно помрет завтра, за ней еще ехать нужно будет сегодня. Она просит, что да я же еще живу, я жить хочу, я...
Скинули з вода. Як стануть землею закопувати, то я мала не ходила на кладбище, а люди такі вже дорослі ходили. Казали, земля ворушилася, як закриють цю землю.
The forced famine that resulted was so horrific, the situation so desperate, that there were even widespread reports of cannibalism.
I was once with a group of people going to one part of Ukraine, and I said, is there some older lady that could tell me something about what happened?
What the woman told him next, he would never forget.
And she said, oh my God, I really don't like to talk about that. She says, you see, there is this house on the top of the hill there. A mother ate her daughter. She was already insane, because people usually reach the level of insanity. And then she committed suicide.
How did the Soviets deal with this? They printed posters that said, "To eat your own children is a barbarian act." This period is known as the Holodomor, roughly translated as murder by hunger.
І помирати від голоду не було дуже рідким явищем там, в 19-му, повторюю, і 20-му столітті. Але є дві різниці. Смерть від голоду і вбивство голоду.
These intentional policies resulted in murder as efficient as has ever been seen in human history.
You find that whole families actually die out, like 8 members in the family.
Many millions of people were killed, and given the fact that it was done within 1 year, I believe it is certainly comparable to the great genocides of the 20th century.
Most know that the horrors of the Holocaust resulted in the deaths of approximately 6 million Jews. But what many don't know is that the government-designed starvation in the Ukraine caused the deaths of between 7 and 10 million in just 1 year. None of this is meant to diminish the horrors of the Holocaust. The pure evil that inspired it is above question and must be remembered vividly and at all costs. Though, in addition, the other victims of vicious governments who have treated human life as nothing but a speed bump to their grand design must also be remembered.
It is not just the number of people, it's the national culture also. Imagine how many writers, artists, all of them perished.
One of the most disgusting things about the way we talk about communism is you have people talk about it as if it was this well-intentioned social experiment. But even at the level of first principles, of the sort of planning sessions, it was planned and premeditated mass murder on a massive scale.
Paired with the newest devices of destruction.
All the while supported by prominent media members. The New York Times now acknowledges their role in the propping up of Stalin's regime by their reporter, Walter Duranty. He called the forced famine in the Ukraine mostly bunk and viciously justified the millions dead by saying, you can't make an omelet without breaking eggs.
Because of this information, many people in the West reacted quite passively to what happened in Ukraine. Duranty was there and his position was pro-Soviet. I think he did a lot of harm to the truth at that time.
He reported, no, there is no famine in Ukraine, but there is widespread mortality due to diseases of malnutrition.
Yet, still, even in August of last year, the Times wrote in a book review that despite the fact that Friedrich Engels, one of the founders of communism, was an advocate of ethnic cleansing, he would have been a fine man to drink with. And it is surely true that Engels' larger critique of capitalism resonates down the ages.
Але визнати цю трагедію – це не тільки визнати геноцид українського народу. Це треба визначити злочинність не тільки сталінського режиму, а самого комуністичного ладу. А це, на мій погляд, ще досить складна дискусія для дуже багатьох людей. І, на жаль, в тому числі і Європі.
And apparently, here in America as well. It is up to us to know the truth so our children don't face the same threat ever again. Each year, Ukrainians gather to remember the Holodomor by lighting 25,000 candles. Why 25,000? Because during this intentional famine, they lost 25,000 people every single day. Allowing this to happen one more time would be unforgivable.
The totalitarian system established by Stalin was responsible for murdering millions of innocent people in the most horrendous way, and nobody was interested in knowing about it. The question is, what kind of people are we?
In case you're still not convinced that the famine was intentional, during our exclusive interview for this documentary with President Viktor Yushchenko of the Ukraine, he said that during the famine of the Ukrainian people, They needed 10 million tons of grain to avoid hunger. They produced 12.2 million tons.